Welcome to episode 65 of the Ski Podcast. This is going to be our last episode of 2020, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to 2021. So thank you for joining us. And don't forget that you can also listen to us on your smart speaker or via YouTube now as well. Now, today we're going to be covering all sorts of things. We're going to be looking at Team GB. We're going to be looking at whether you can ski in Europe and whether people have been escaping from Switzerland. We're also going to be talking about my own trip to Switzerland earlier this month to Crans-Montana, and cross-country, which is on the rise, and with the lifts being closed at the moment. We're going to be talking about skiing in Wales and sustainability in chalets. But first, I'd like to welcome my guests for today, and they are Betony Garner, who's joining us from the Chamonix Valley. Morning, Betony. How are you?
Good morning, Iain. I'm fine, thank you. I'm looking at snow, which is good news.
Good, that's very exciting. And regular listeners to the show will know our next guest who's joining us today, Mike Richards, who's been on many times before. How are you, Mike?
Good morning, Iain. Season's greetings. Yes, very well, thanks. If I squint, I can see snow from my house as well.
That's good. Well, sadly, here in Brighton, I can't see any snow at all. But before we just move on, I'd just like to thank Switzerland Tourism for supporting the podcast. We really appreciate their support. But let's go back to snow. This is a question I like to ask all of our guests when they come on. So, Betony, you can answer this first. When did you ski last?
I had a ski on Boxing Day. I did a little skin up to get rid of the Christmas festivities, shall we say, and ski down. So yeah, I was very lucky. We had a bit of fresh snow, so it was nice in parts, shall we say.
Okay, where was that, Betony?
In Les Houches.
Right. Okay, excellent. Well, that sounds pretty good. And what was your vertical gain? Were you going for it?
I think 900-ish, so not bad.
Ooh,
for Boxing
that's
Day.
a big day out. Yeah. And Mike, what about yourself? When did you last ski?
I was very fortunate to ski yesterday in the central part of the Brecon Beacons. We had a good fall over the last couple of evenings, so it came down hot and heavy, and it was challenging. Not much visibility because it was still snowing for most of the day when I was up there, but managed to ski right back to the car park, which is a rarity at the moment. But so got a good sort of 450 vertical meters, and
wow.
Really packed in nicely wind-blown snow to tuft skiing.
That is very exciting to hear, and I love the fact you're skiing in Great Britain, and we're going to ask you about that in a little bit more detail later. I will just throw in that I skied in Crans-Montana early this month, while I know it was still legal to go there and come back. But we'll also come on to Crans-Montana. Let's have a little chat about Team GB, because Team GB have started racing. All the racing in the World Cup, etc., is behind closed doors at the moment. But just to chip in, because I know listeners like to get an update on Dave Ryding, who's been on the show a couple of times. He came 10th in his first race of the season in Alta, Badia in Italy. I was also really pleased for Andrew Young, who took a podium. He was second in the cross-country in Dresden. He also had a third, I think, elsewhere. And we're going to be talking about cross-country more. So now that I've tried it, I've got a lot of respect. But I also wanted to chip in about an athlete I didn't know of called Mia Brookes. Now, Mia Brookes is 13 years old, and she got a podium on her senior debut. And I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes. She's a snowboarder competing in slopestyle in the Europa Cup. And I just think that's amazing. She's actually going to be too young, unless the Winter Olympics are delayed, to qualify for the Winter Olympics. So she's targeting 2026. But that's amazing. Now, Betony, I know that you used to do the media for Snowsport GB, didn't you? Mia Brookes is only 13. Have you come across her at all?
Yeah, so yeah, I used to work with when it was British Ski and Snowboard. It's now obviously GB Snowsport. But yeah, I did come across her when she was. I'm just trying to think how old she would have been, maybe 9 or 10. But already then she was earmarked as a big talent. She is talented, hugely talented, and yeah, she's just been working hard. I think she's a real grafter. She's obviously naturally talented, but she works really hard at what she does. And it's amazing feat. Probably maybe not surprising because she is so talented. But I don't know if you read the story that her coach had to fly home at the last minute. She was there on her own, and then she managed a podium. So a pretty incredible story. And that is only the start. I think she's going to become a big name, and we're going to hear a lot about her. So yeah, I love hearing stories like that. It's just brilliant.
I love that. I mean, 13 years old, just the amount of confidence she must have, which is brilliant. And another skier who I noticed has pulled out a good result, who I think we've mentioned on the podcast before, but is Reece Bell. Now, that name might be familiar to some listeners. Certainly the surname will be, because she is the daughter of Martin Bell and the niece of Graham Bell. And she is 19 years old now and has been brought up over in the States, but is also racing for Team GB. Have you come across her at all, Betony?
I've never met her because she's primarily based out in the US. But yeah, again, over probably the last 4 or so years, since she actually came onto the British team, she's been consistently performing well at her level. And then now she's doing FIS races, and a first place in a FIS race is a pretty big deal. So yeah, she's primarily based out of Vale. So she does a lot with the Vale Ski Club, but I know she has also been training with the British Ski Academy. So she's been spending some time in Europe. So yeah, again, very, very talented and one to watch for sure.
Great. Well, two names to watch there: Mia Brookes and Reece Bell. Who knows when the next Olympics will be, but we'll discover that in due course. Obviously, the future has so much uncertainty to it. I mean, since our last episode, we've actually had our Brexit deal, so to speak. It means that going into Europe from the 1st of January, as I understand it today, and we're recording on the 29th of December, it's not going to be possible under current COVID regulations. You're going to have to make sure your passport is at least 6 months in date. We have no idea yet what the situation will be for British people working, of which I have contacted Charlie Owen from SBIT, Seasonal Businesses in Travel, and they still are looking through all of the detail to try and find out how it will affect British workers when they go over to work in Europe, assuming that does continue. But the biggest change since our last podcast is that although the lifts are still open in Switzerland, you can no longer ski in Switzerland. And a story I'm sure both of you will have probably seen has been in the media the last couple of days about British people escaping from Verbier and fleeing in the night. Did you see this story, Mike? And what did you think about that?
I did, and I'm very fortunate that I have 2 friends that live in Verbier, and stretching the truth would be a massive understatement. I think, holidaymakers took the opportunity while it was still legal and classified as safe if they'd taken all the precautions to go on a winter holiday. And then circumstances changed when they were out there. And, it was the picture that was painted was almost like the flight from Israel. It was blown out of all proportion and absolute nonsense just to get people to click through on the stories on the internet or, to sell newspapers. And unfortunately, those people who had their holiday disrupted, they knew what they were letting themselves in for, I think. And they gambled. And on this occasion, unfortunately, they lost. But a non-story, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because it is kind of my view as well. I think that's probably the view of people who are within the industry. Just the way it was reported made it sound like the Great Escape, as if all of these holidaymakers had all bust out in one group, the 420 people in quarantine in Verbier who fled under the cover of darkness, etc. And I've looked into this in, I think, a reasonable amount of detail, and certainly they were legally entitled to leave, although it does seem that in the Valais they needed to get authority. But for example, in Wengen, which is in the Bern canton, I think, they were just given permission to leave if they wanted to travel back, and made sure that I think they had to not use public transport, so they could hire a car or they could drive in their own car between the airport or just back to the UK via France, making sure that they took precautions along the way, then that would be fully legal. Any thoughts on this, Betony, in it being in a country where I believe Macron has told people not to go to Switzerland at the moment?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Mike. I think it was completely dramatised, and it's interesting. I saw the article on a Swiss website, and then you can see it. Pardon the pun, snowballing. One British outlet picks it up, blah 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 blah. I work in the media. I see it all the time. So, yeah, like Mike said, they went out and it was all legal, and then just said, you've got to quarantine, and they just decided to get out of there. And yeah, I haven't really looked into the legalities, but yeah, a bit of a non-story. But maybe get skiing in the press. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay.
Right, I'm not sure this is the right way to get into the press. There actually have been some very interesting articles in the Telegraph written by someone who I know, and I'm pretty sure you know her as well, Betony, Alex Moore.
Yeah. Okay.
She has been in Wengen, and she's been writing an update of what it's been like in quarantine. And I'm very much hoping that I might be able to interview her and drop it into the podcast. So, listener, if you suddenly find an interview appearing now, then I have. Great. Okay. I'm here with Alex Moore, who is currently over in Wengen in quarantine. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hi. Yeah, you know what? It's actually been okay. I'm pretty lucky.
Okay, that's good. We've had a couple of technical problems, but we've resolved them now. So we're going to find out a little bit more about what it's like to be in quarantine in Switzerland. This is probably not a new thing, but I have noticed a lot of people have got very angry on social media over the last few days about reports coming out of Switzerland, some of which might be a bit dubious. So we're going to find out a few more details, because Alex genuinely is in Wengen, and I believe that you have been in quarantine for 9 days now. Is that right?
Yeah, 9 days, just one more to go.
One more day to go, so that must be pretty exciting. Tell me to start off with, like, firstly, I'd like to just introduce this by saying, okay, lots of people get angry about certain things, but it's totally legal going to Switzerland, prior to this quarantine starting. I went to Switzerland, to Crans-Montana in mid-December, and the hygiene measures over there are incredible. And, some people might think that, there's a risk or you're spreading a coronavirus, etc. All I can say is, from my own personal experience, from what I saw in Switzerland, is that the hygiene measures in place are incredibly detailed and much more in depth than anything I've really seen in the UK. But we'll put that aside, because I want to keep the politics out of it and focus on you, Alex. You arrived before quarantine started, I take it?
Yeah, I did. I arrived a day before the quarantine started.
Right.
And, I understand the frustration from everybody's, who came out trying to get away for Christmas, trying to at least have a nice, enjoyable Christmas because of this year. And, retrospective quarantine is something new.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite surprising when they announced it. So effectively, if viewers don't understand what happened, even though it was only announced on the 20th of December, I think it was the 20th. 21st. They backdated that to the 14th.
Yeah.
So anyone who'd arrived in Switzerland after the 14th of December still had to quarantine for 10 days, which would be, a lot of a shock.
Well, I mean, they've been walking around town and skiing and doing everything they've, just being normal, leading a normal life in Switzerland, obviously wearing masks and doing everything, the guidelines, but then being told after however many days, 7 or whatever, that you have to sit in your room. I understand the confusion.
For sure.
Can
I ask, Alex, how you found out that you needed to quarantine? I imagine word spread very quickly, but were you formally told at all?
Yeah. So I was sent a message. I think everybody who has an English phone in Switzerland is automatically sent a message saying, if you came in on or after the 14th, you have to quarantine for 10 days, and you have to register with the Gemeinde, which is the like
the local town hall,
in the canton that you're in. So you have 2 days to do that. When you've arrived, you have within 2 days to tell them that you're here and that you're quarantining, and obviously you're not going to move.
But you had to go out to register. You actually had to.
No. So no. You do it on the phone. So they send you a link.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah. Just to chip in, I mean, I was in Crans-Montana from the 13th to the 17th of December. So on that backdated basis, I should have been quarantining, but I had already left Switzerland because I was back in the UK. And I actually got a text message saying, "Oh, you need to quarantine."
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, I don't know how they got the records. Perhaps they got it from the hotel or something like that. Certainly my phone wasn't in Switzerland at the time. You're on day 9 now. So tomorrow is your last day of quarantine. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, I mean, how difficult has it been, like looking out at the mountains around you, not being able to go out on them?
I mean, obviously, when it's absolutely pelting it down with snow, and your entire family are off on, ski school and whatever else, even walking the dog, because I brought my dog, you're a bit like, "Oh, okay, see you later. Have a great day. I'll just be here if you need anything." But I mean, it's been fine. I'm, again, as I said, I'm really, really lucky. I'm not sitting in my flat in London, so if I'm going to quarantine anywhere, it's going to be here. Or
today is I lose track of it in the holidays, but I think it's Tuesday today. So your first day of skiing will be Thursday. So you're going to be first lifting on Thursday?
Yeah, I might be on bring your niece and nephew to ski school duty. And then I will be like, "Bye, have a lovely time. See you later."
Yeah, I can see you getting out there really quickly.
Let's just go back to France. Are you aware, Betony, of anyone, or would you even be able to prepare to tell us, going over to Switzerland, or does it even matter if you can go ski touring?
So, a lot of people are just going ski touring in France. I know people that have gone to Switzerland. I know mountain guides are legally allowed to go there and work. I know some British mountain guides based in the Chamonix Valley who have been going to Switzerland for work. That's completely legal. And from their information, I know the Raj gendarmes are police at the border. What I don't know is if they're stopping kind of normal people, so non-professionals going through the border or not. But it is being discouraged for sure. And I don't think many people are doing it because it's a really busy period anyway in Christmas, and there's lots of lift queues, etc. So by the looks of when I've been touring the last few weeks, everybody's ski touring in France. That's what I would say. There's a lot of people on the mountain.
Yeah, well, that does seem to be the case. I mean, I will put a link into the show notes where I read an article about the border authorities stopping people leaving France and just warning them that they were not meant to go skiing in Switzerland, but not actually stopping anyone from doing it. But the facts are the lifts are still turning in Switzerland. And this is because in cantons like the Valais, they've kept their R rate down. The restaurants have now closed as of the 27th of December. But I went out to Crans-Montana earlier this month. And predominantly I chose Crans-Montana because they also are into ski touring. And the kind of irony is that I spent the first couple of days, I only took 2 lifts in the first couple of days. You couldn't have felt more secure than it was while I was there. I did have a guide with me who took me round, but he was the only person I shared a lift with in the entire time that I was there. And I think that's probably one of the ironies of ski touring, because I guess you're probably familiar with this, Mike. I mean, when you're ski touring, one of the reasons we've been talking about it so much this year is because you don't need to take lifts at all.
Great if you can have the opportunity to take a lift to a higher point and then tour from there. And oftentimes, the snow low down isn't of a good enough quality to tour on anyway. If it's wet, if the snow is wet, it'll saturate the skins.
Yeah, I mean, that actually, when I was in Crans-Montana, okay, the first day, we did take the lift up to the mid station, and then we toured from there. It was on the second day I went without the guide, and actually I just toured from the bottom of the resort because it wasn't really such a big drama. But that was interesting what you said there about the snow sticking, because on the second day when I got a bit higher, the snow was very cold and it was sticking to the bottom of my skins. Now, I'm not a fully experienced ski tourer yet, but I understand now that you really should be waxing your skins as in the same way as you might wax your skis, and that can stop that snow sticking. Have you ever had that kind of situation?
I've never waxed my skins. I mean, you just keep them as dry as you possibly can, and you put them on when you feel that the snow that you're going to be touring on is going to be the snow that you're going to be skiing on. So there'll be no temperature change as such from the uphill movement to the downhill movement.
Right. It's interesting. Christian, my guide, also told me that he irons his skins, which really surprised me, just to kind of, keep them as smooth as possible. But, I did enjoy my time in Crans-Montana. They've got a set of 15 ski touring routes there. So they call it the Rando Park. And I'd say that Crans-Montana, it's probably not the most exciting resort that I've been to based on what I was able to ski. With Christian, my guide, as we were going up to the glacier, he pointed out different off-piste runs that in different circumstances we could have tried, and that certainly would have made it, much more challenging. South-facing, so I'd say good for families, etc. But those ski touring routes are a really good way of getting into it. Have either of you, Betony, have you been to Crans-Montana at all?
I have. I've been a few times actually, and I've done a ski touring route in the Rando Park as well. Really great route actually. Had a really good time. And I've also started and ended a big multi-trip ski tour in and out of Crans-Montana, and that was late season, kind of typical touring season. And yeah, south facing. It was there wasn't much snow low down, but it's an interesting place, Crans-Montana. But I think you have to get to know it a bit better, and when you get to know it, you start to like it more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, I think it helps when you have a guide. Christian was just explaining to me about all the different routes, and you can see how these things fit together. Mike, I know you skied in all sorts of resorts all over the world. Have you been to Crans-Montana?
Only in the night time. I went up for dinner, and it was a fabulous dinner based down in Montreux. And I'd skied a couple of days in that area, but Crans-Montana didn't have the snow I don't think it actually was open that early. I went to Lausanne and to Glacier 3000, and that was good early sort of number skiing a couple of years back. I think it's a great idea though for these resorts that a lot of the time now I think we're losing the aesthetic of skiing because everything is very much about performance and how quick you can go and how you can measure vertical and all those kinds of things. And getting to the top of the lift and stopping and having a look and to use the American vernacular, smelling the coffee, I think is being lost a little bit. So having these multi ability routes where you can almost take a walk in the mountains, but you're doing it on skis is a fantastic thing, especially if you've got a knowledgeable guide who can tell you about the flora, the fauna, a little bit history of the valley. Then it makes it a very different ski day out, I think. And I think those kinds of things in future will be more and more popular.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, you could almost be Christian, my guide, talking right then, because he was specifically going on about how he finds it frustrating people are too concerned with their ski tracks apps rather than just looking around and enjoying themselves. And, as you say, that the park there, they've got all sorts of different routes with different elevations, etc. And they have got one called the 1000. And on my second day, I set off thinking, right, I'm going to do this 1,000-meter vertical. And I got to about 800. I'd done about 800 meters, and I just thought, I don't need to do this. Like, what's the point of just going on for another, however long it was, just to kind of tick a little box? I've really enjoyed it, and I think it's time to turn around. So I like what you're saying there. So in relation to Crans, I think I will go back there again. One of the things I did like about it in particular was I travelled by train, as I normally do, because regular listeners will know. Ski Flight Free is a campaign I founded to encourage people to travel to ski resorts by train. And that was very straightforward.
I travelled from Eurostar to Paris, across Paris, Gare de Lyon down to Lausanne. And then from Lausanne, you just go along the valley to the Rhone Valley to Sierre. And in Sierre, they have a funicular that goes up to the resort. And of course, it being Switzerland, that timing of that funicular fits in exactly with the arrival of your train. You've got enough time to get out, actually had enough time to just go to the supermarket, buy a couple of things, walk over to the funicular, straight up into resort. And so, it was very, very straightforward way of traveling. And I'll drop a video of that into the show notes. But another thing I did while I was in Crans-Montana, which was really interesting, was I dropped down to a place called the Alta Chalet, which is about 15 minutes drive, maybe 10 minutes drive below Crans-Montana itself. And this is just an amazing facility, which has an outdoor skate park and an indoor skate park and an indoor area for gymnasts, for parkour and for freestylers just to practice, with lots of foam pits. Such an amazing facility. And I met with the owner there called Adam Bonvin, and this is what we talked about. So I'm here today with Adam Bonvin. How are you today?
I'm really good. And you?
Excellent. Well, I'm really good. I'm very impressed with your setup here, which is the Alta Chalet, just below Crans-Montana. Do you want to kind of briefly explain? I mean, I can see it from where I'm sitting in this amazing bar looking down, but you want to explain what facilities you've got here?
So it's an action sport facility. We mean action sport, all the sport, skiing, skating, roller, BMX. So we have three main places in the building. One is the gym activity. We are tumbling, parkour park. We have trampoline. We even have airbags to train your tricks and jump in it. And we have the only big trampoline with a 5x5. You can see over there.
Yeah.
So it's the only one in Valais. So a lot of pro comes around to train in this one because you can jump higher than 8 meters on this one.
Right, okay. I mean, I think a lot of parents who are listening to this will probably have been to some of those trampoline parks in the UK with their kids, and I can tell you that this is completely different from that. There's much more technical. I mean, my daughter loves gymnastics. There's a massive tumbling mat here where you could get a proper run in, and the parkour section, which my son would love, is just amazing. And that's just on one side. Then on the other side, over there, we've got a full indoor skate park, haven't we?
Exactly. So on the other side is really like the paradise for wheels. So we have an indoor bowl, we have a pump track, we have a big air with an airbag to land, and also a resi landing where you can really train your tricks and then either go outside or go to the snow park to retrain. We have a unique ski and snowboard with wheels as well that we can.
Yeah, I saw those. I'll stick a photo in the show notes. They're amazing.
Yeah, so like these kids can train in summer as well their ski technique.
Yeah.
And then in winter be ready for the snow park.
Yeah, and so people can come here. They can either come on a day trip, or you do camps as well. So it's residential, so someone could come and stay, and they could either be a generalist or they could specialise in one area.
Exactly. We offer either the full action sport experience, where you can skate, you can ski with us for the week, or you can just come in and specialize. We have coach in scooter, in skateboard or BMX. So you can really do a week to specialize in the sport you love. And then we are working on a surf park down in Sion. So the goal is to offer in those camps to ski, surf and skate the same day.
Yeah, the surf park sounds amazing. When we discussed it before, you said it would be perhaps similar to the place in Bristol called The Wave, and offer you, different choices of waves, from 50 centimeters to 2 meters or something like that. Sounds amazing. And effectively, you can then offer people 4 seasons coverage for all of these different sports.
Yes, that's really the dream and the vision with Alaya, is to offer the client either for a day trip or a week or weekend to come ski, skate and surf. And as we are 30 minutes away from the wave and the ski resort, so within 1 hour you can leave your ski at the hotel and be in the wave already.
Yeah, I love that idea, and you know, some people might have you know, kids or teenagers, or yourself. You might be interested in taking one of the courses, but you can also do day trips here as well. And I think I found this really interesting because it fits in really well with what Crans-Montana are offering at the moment, which is something called the hotel pass. So you book your accommodation, and then on a daily basis you can buy your lift pass from the reception in the hotel and get a discount on it. It means you don't have to commit to a 6-day pass. So if the weather was bad one day and you're here as a family, you could then, you know, you say, oh, well, I tell you what, why don't we just come down to the Alta Chalet today and enjoy the facilities down here? And then when you come on a day trip, you can pay for the whole place, or you can choose.
So either it's really a la carte. You can take a full day activities, or you can just book a 1 hour of skate or trampoline. It depends your schedule, what you want to do. And the luck we are with Alta is that we are 4-season activity, that you can come in winter or summer. We are always open, and the weather cannot really annoy us. So when it's bad weather on the ski slope, we are really full and packed here. And it's a really combined activity for people over for the week or the weekend. They can enjoy the ski, and then they can come at night or during the day here.
Yeah, and it suits all abilities. But you mentioned to me before that you often find that, for example, in summer, you get a lot of teams who are training up in Saas-Fee. But if it's a bad weather day in Saas-Fee, they'll actually come down from the mountain and come over here so they can keep different aspects of their training going.
It's really the core with Alta is to provide like really high-level infrastructure that you can really train, even if you're an amateur and you want to have fun, or you can train as a pro team. So with all the pros coming in Saas-Fee during summer and here during winter to train, we have like all the best teams around the world coming to do training here. So it's really amazing to see that what we design work really well, and people are happy, from a beginner that is 8-year-old to like a pro that's won the Olympic Games.
Well, I love that idea that you could be down here and then, you know, on the track next to you, the trampoline next to you, there's someone who's an Olympic athlete, for example. That would be great. Well, you know, next time we're coming down the Valais with my kids, we're definitely going to drop in here because it looks great. That's brilliant, Adam. Thank you very much, and all the best for this winter.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So, I mean, I said in the interview there that, you know, my kids would love it. And my daughter loves gymnastics. I have a massive tumbling mat there. My son loves parkour. But actually, you know, if you're a professional, a freestyler, Adam was telling me how athletes, if they're up in Saas-Fee in the summer and it's a bad weather day, instead of using the park there, where they can't use a park there, they'll actually drive down, come along to the Alta Chalet and use the facilities there to continue to practice their moves. And what he's also developing in Seal, or near to Seal, is going to be a surf centre like that place called the Wave, I think it is, in Bristol. And the idea is that people, you know, it'll be a 4-season facility. So people would go surfing, they can go skateboarding, you can go up onto the mountain. They've got a massive pipe in Crans-Montana anyway, and they're building an accommodation up there as well. So, you know, that will be really interesting, and I'm definitely going to try and track it down. But let's be a bit more prosaic, because I'm never going to be flying through the air into a foam pit, I don't think. But I did try cross country while I was in Crans-Montana, the different end of the scale. And this was the first time I'd done it in 25 years. And I did it with my guide, Christian, and I got a little bit of audio here from that. So, I'm standing at the top of the glacier in Crans-Montana with the thinnest skis I've ever seen beneath me. It's I can't say I feel comfortable. Learning how to put on my boots onto the skis, I feel like a complete beginner, but that's because I am a complete beginner. So let's just see how this goes. So that was interesting. Just been up a T-bar on cross-country skis. That's another first for me, despite the fact I've been skiing for many years. Sometimes it's a bit of a challenge when you're on a T-bar, but it seemed to go okay, didn't it, Christian?
Yeah, fine, beautiful, good buddy.
Yeah, and my first couple of runs, we've been practicing skating. We practiced classic,
We're just on the piste area at the moment because there's a slight delay in the cross-country area opening. It being up here on the glacier, a crevasse has appeared where they're just putting in a snow bridge at the moment. But we will go down and check it out once it's secured. So progressing well. So that was my first time cross-country skiing for 25 years, and it was just such a strange experience being a novice and a beginner again. Just feeling so awkward on those skis, like Bambi or a deer when it's first trying to stand up. But I got to grips with it. I had excellent tuition from Christian, and it's a shame that we weren't able to go on the full runs on the ski de fond area, but we had plenty of space to go around here, and proper exercise at 3,000 metres, but very pure air, very clean, all the sun glistening off the crystals on the snow. Really lovely morning. So that was my cross-country experience. Really, really interesting to be a beginner again and to be out of my comfort zone. Now, Betony, I believe that you've been doing quite a lot of cross-country in recent years, or is it just this winter? Tell me.
I think the last 4 to 5 years I've been doing it, but dabbling, because what ends up happening is you kind of do a little bit and then the lists open and you go alpine skiing and you forget about cross country. But obviously this season, no lists opening. I've definitely done more than I've ever done before. So last season, I don't know why I'd never done it before, but I took a lesson, and that changed it all for me. Actually having a lesson and someone telling me how to do it properly. I personally, I love it. I'm quite into fitness, so it kind of ticks that box. But also, depending where you are, you feel like you can get away from it. I'd say a normal season, it's normally quite quiet. This season is exactly the opposite, but we can talk about that in a bit. But yeah, it's maybe going back to the roots of skiing, you could say, but it's worth a try. But as you found out, Iain, going from normally having 90 centimeters under your foot to having a skinny ski, you're like, when the first time you do it, you're like, what is going on? This is the weirdest feeling. And the boot's so supple compared to a normal ski boot. So yeah, but I'm a convert, so there we go.
Yeah, well, it's true. Well, I don't know if you listened to our the mini podcast that I put out just before Christmas, but we had Mark Seaton, a mountain guide from Chamonix, on, and he was saying the number of people who are doing cross country in Chamonix is just amazing, and all the shops have sold out of cross country gear. You can't get hold of anything. Mike, have you ever tried cross country?
I haven't, no, but on those lower sections of ski touring where it's not just the up, you have those little downhill sections where it's too much. It's not a long enough stretch to take the skins off and lock the heel down. So you kind of try to do a little bit of alpine stroke telemark turn downhill to get to the next uphill, and it's very, very difficult. It's I can tell it's even more difficult when you're on the cross country skis. And I was lucky enough with Christian, he gave me a lesson, and we did classic, and classic is basically when you go straight, and that is relatively straightforward. But skating, oh my god, how difficult was that? And I think, am I right, Bet, that you prefer skating? You're a skater?
I do prefer skating. Maybe that's because I ice skate, so it doesn't feel too unusual. But you say all these things, but these are just kind of general sweeping things. But you do go faster when you're skating, unless you're next to one of the pros who are going classicing, and when they're running uphill on their classic skis, which is the most amazing thing to watch. But yeah, I prefer skating, but both are great. I've got set up for both. But I would urge listeners to just YouTube and watch some of the professional guys doing cross country, because it is phenomenal to watch when they're kind of speeding around corners and speeding up hills. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's true enough. I mentioned Andrew Young earlier, and I've got tremendous admiration for all of those guys. I think, Betony, you mentioned to me that you've actually bought a specific cross-country pass for your region. Is that right? What does it cover, and how much does it cost?
Yeah, because of where I live, I'm just outside of Chamonix, so I'm close to Megève and La Contamine and other places. So I decided to buy a Haute-Savoie Nordic Pass, which gives you access to any Nordic centre in the Haute-Savoie. So I've kind of got on my bucket list to go and try some of places I've not been to in the winter. So like the Plateau de Glières, which people might remember from this year's Tour de France, very famous plateau. Famous from the Second World War as well. So yeah, we could try up there, and Solaizon, and another just above Cluses called Agy. So yeah, I've got a big list of cross country centres to go to. So maybe the list don't need to open because I've got lots of things to do before they open.
Yeah, and is that kind of pass expensive?
It's not expensive at all, actually. I think it's really good value. I paid €122, and if you'd have got it, I think in November on its kind of promotional rate, it would have been €99.
Yeah, excellent, and that covers all of those areas. Well, that sounds good. I mean, would I do it again? Obviously, I prefer to ski. With the lifts being closed, there's been an increase in interest in it. I would probably go for ski touring, but I'm not going to say I wouldn't do it again. In Crans-Montana, we went up to the glacier, and it's quite unusual in that we were doing our cross country at 3,000 meters rather than down at resort level, which is typically more likely where you would do it. And that glacier essentially was just a cross country area. There are a whole bunch of routes for cross country. Very, very quiet, completely away from everywhere. Incredibly good training if you're exercising at 3,000 meters. So I'm not saying I wouldn't do it again, but it's not going to happen. Not going to happen yet. But it is interesting how these alternatives to traditional skiing have been becoming more popular, particularly since the lifts have closed. And the lifts are closed. It's difficult for us in Britain to get over to the Alps. And skiing in the UK has been going on. I was sent a great video, which I'm going to stick in the show notes, from the Where Stags Roar Facebook page. They were skiing in Scotland yesterday. But Mike, I know one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the show today is you've been doing quite a bit of skiing in Wales. You made us very jealous by telling us you were skiing yesterday. I'm really interested in that in a bit more detail. Are you prepared to actually expose where you go and share those details?
Absolutely. We're very fortunate, stroke unfortunate, in my western part of Wales, where the weather systems are very similar to those of Hokkaido, where I spend most of my winters, and I have done for over the last decade, where large body of mass of water brings lots of precipitation. Orographic lift lifts the clouds, hits mountains, comes down as hopefully snow, and that's what tends to happen in Hokkaido on the western parts of the European continent and the North American continent. Unfortunately for us, the Gulf Stream keeps things pretty warm most of the time, but when we do get those cold air coming down from the north and the northwest, then that combination of a regular supply of precipitation with cold air gives us snow. And the Brecon Beacons National Park and Pen y Fan, which is the highest peak at 886 meters, is the highest part in southern Britain. So if a weather system comes in from the west, that's what's going to cop it. And most people will think, they'll have seen photographs of the Brecon Beacons in the summertime. It's a very popular destination. It's very easy access. You can park at the bottom of the paved almost path that takes you to the top. But in wintertime, it's becoming more and more popular because access is there. The equipment, even just for walking, has become a lot better. But every winter, we get at least one storm system every month from November through to April. So there's 6 months potential worth of snowfall. And some days it's literally a day. And other days you can go for maybe 3 or 4 days of cold weather, which is what we've got at the moment. And you can get multi-days trips up there.
I mean, it sounds amazing. I mean, I don't know the Brecon Beacons myself. I am very interested in where someone should go. But let's talk about that snow. I'm really interested in that snow itself. You're saying a system comes over it, drops it. What kind of snow? What is that giving you to actually ski on there?
Anything from the inside of your freezer, which is those little ice crystals, right through to legitimate powder. It depends. I mean, it's one of those odd things where if you're in a ski resort, the last thing you want to have is wind accompanied by the snow, because invariably that'll shut the lifts or it'll make the snow conditions quite challenging. A lot of the time, that's what we look for, is a really violent, heavy storm, because it almost acts like a polyfiller, where it fills in all the gaps. It's kind of wet, but then because of the wind, that's what kind of firms it up then.
We are blessed by the fact that you share some amazing photos on Instagram. I mean, some of those shots are so beautiful, but I'm wondering how many actual turns you get in. I mean, you said the highest point is 886, but are you actually getting a decent run down from the top there?
It depends on the snow conditions. A lot of the time it's kind of ridgeline skiing, where you're sort of skiing either side of a ridge, because that's where the snow is settled and consolidated. So you're kind of doing more of a long distance traverse with some half turns. So you're going down a ridgeline to the bottom and then walking back up. But for example, yesterday, there was good snow coverage top to bottom. So, they were legitimate turns, for almost 400 meters worth of vertical, which is maybe a couple of kilometers. So it's surprising how much terrain is out there. But it's, beggars can't be choosers, as you always say, and you don't really know what's going to happen until you get up there. The weather models have become a lot more sophisticated in terms of telling us when it's going to snow, how much snow is going to come down. But ultimately, you don't know until you go.
Well, I mean, your photos look great, and the fact that you're able to ski just now is obviously very exciting as well. Where actually do you head to then when you talk about the road or the car park? Where are you looking to take the best ridges?
So the central beacons area, where it has the three highest peaks in that area, are just off the A470 that links Cardiff right through to North Wales. That's the main artery that runs north-south or south-north in Wales. And there are two car parks. One's the Story Arms, and the other one is the Pont d'Ardave, which means the bridge over the river. And there's plenty of parking there. Some days it gets a little bit busy. And then there are recognized consolidated paths that go from the car parks right to the summits. So it's navigation-wise, even in the worst weather, as long as you stick to the path along the lines of the American Werewolf in London, then you won't go far wrong.
Yeah, and obviously you're very experienced though with that as well. I think perhaps you said yesterday it was snowing in bad conditions, right?
Yeah, and you can get a little bit lost if you don't know where you're going. But ultimately everything falls down to the river and the valley floor and the road. So if you don't actually hit the spot where you parked, then you're only going to be 100 yards or so away from where you need to be.
Yeah, well, I don't think we want to be encouraging any beginners perhaps to do it on snowy days, because just to chip back to you, Betony, I following a lot of conversations on Twitter about people being very, I don't know if it's paranoid, maybe concerned about inexperienced ski tourers in France. People who are desperate to go skiing, taking on terrain or going into terrain that is not secured or is not safe. Have you seen anything like that?
There's definitely a lot of people who have never ski toured before going ski touring. I saw that on Les Houches on Boxing Day. I was in Les Arcs before Christmas and saw a lot of that. It's quite interesting. So some resorts are preparing maybe a ski touring itinerary. So Les Arcs had got one coming out of Arc 1600, for example. So that's been prepared. But yeah, it's a really tricky situation at the minute, because resorts aren't actively encouraging people on the whole, but people are going out and going ski touring. And the problem is in some places that say that you're going up in where normally the resort would have a piste, but it's not being pisted. Or maybe it's they did start pre-Christmas kind of churning up the piste, getting ready to kind of get them prepared. But then that then gives like actually a probably even more unsafe terrain, not in terms of avalanches, but in terms of kind of ice blocks or cannon snow, etc. So Yeah, and there's lots of chat about the pressure on the PGHM, so the rescue service here, and obviously the hospitals. But it's really tricky because you can't stop people going into the mountains. Well, you can, but people are desperate to go. You can feel it. There's like this. You can feel like the desperation to go, and not just to ski, but just to be in the mountains, to be in the outdoors.
Hey,
So,
I can tell you, Betony, that I can feel that from this country, let alone in France, where you can actually see them. And you don't get, in a lot of resorts, they do have, for example, in Courchevel, they've set aside some designated areas for people to ski tour. I guess it's just perhaps inexperienced people going off the beaten track, so to speak. And talking of that beaten track, Mike, you said that there's some established routes to the top. I presume you get some funny looks from the walkers who perhaps aren't really expecting to see anyone on skis when you're up there on the mountain.
Less so now. I mean, I've been skiing there since 1996, and invariably I'd be the only person up there. There was a rope tow back in the 70s and the early 80s on the lower slopes. So there was a kind of recognized club sort of feel going on when the snow came down, much like they got in the Lake District and parts of Scotland. But that stopped, and there's no more building within the national park. So when I first started, I'd be the only person up there. And then thankfully through social media, through the forums and through Instagram, people contact me and say, when are you going up next? And it's always better to ski with somebody else. I mean, there's enough photos of me on the internet. You don't need to see me anymore. So it's nice to get other people. And we had a guy, Sean Manley, who's done many seasons abroad and worked in France. And he came for his first ski. And that's the photographs I think you'll be putting up from the 3rd of December. And that was his first time up there. So more and more people are recognizing that, we've got decent snow conditions, sometimes fantastic, as it was on the 3rd of December. And if you're prepared to put a little bit of effort in, you can get the reward.
Well, it's another one to go onto my bucket list. And if depending how it turns out this season, maybe Wales will present, a possibility as well. I am going to turn back to the Alps, though, because I just wanted to run a quick interview that I did with Dom Turner, who is from a company called Skiology, based out in Morzine. And I came across them because I was looking at an email I received from Montagne Verte, which is the green lobbying group based in Morzine, with this great Christmas story about two penguins. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, but two penguins who are interested in sustainability and don't want too many presents for Christmas. Maybe not the sort of story that would be welcome for too many, young children, but it led to a whole conversation about sustainability. So let's have a quick listen to that. I'm delighted to be joined today on the Ski Podcast by Dom Turner from Skiology, a chalet operator for Morzine and also Les Carreaux. Hi, Dom. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Ian. How are you?
And I'm good. And you in Morzine right now?
Yeah, in Morzine, ready to go for the season that's going to be 2020-21.
Yeah, well, one hopes it will start. That's something we're always covering on the podcast itself. But the reason I wanted to speak to you today is I actually came across your company, who I had heard of before, but through an email that I received from Montagne Verte. And regular listeners to the show will have come across Montagne Verte from our electric cars special that we did a little while ago when we had Al Judge, who was talking about the car they have in Morzine, and he's involved with that. And the email I got was this fascinating story of two penguins trying to create a more sustainable world. I just, in relation to that, I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. But what prompted you to come up with that story then, Dom?
Cripes. So we are, as a company, quite an active part in Mountain Verte, and I'd been talking to them about trying to take the message a little wider and take it into schools, and an opportunity came up to do a lesson at my daughter's school, both in English and French. And so we thought, what better subject to to try and tackle than climate change. And so I guess we wrote, so my wife and I, who did like the original talk to the kids, we wrote a whole load of notes on it, did the talk, and then thought that'd be really neat to get that to a wider audience. And so and so wrote this little book, which I thought could also be like a nice present for like some godchildren. And was chatting with the folks at Mountain Vert, because they're quite keen to, you know, sort of get a structured lesson plan that they can take into schools, and showed them the book, and then went out and then
it was certainly successful in that, because it has reached a broader audience. And I found it interesting. I mean, you obviously have a real interest in sustainability. I noticed on your website that your very ambitious goal is to have the smallest carbon footprint for any ski accommodation provider. That's quite ambitious. How is that going, that journey?
I think we're doing all right. I mean, we want to be able to basically to claim that in sort of 3 to 5 years, which is what we said last year. So I guess we're now 2 to 4 years. And I mean, it's a big goal, but at the same point, like, I don't know, that I suppose go big or go home, like they say in the park. Like, if somebody beats us to it, then we still win. But I think,
of course, well, it is a win-win scenario, that, but as an ambition, it's great. And what I really liked about it is you've kind of described how you're going to try and get to that goal by giving yourself targets for each season. So you had your leap targets for last season, you've got your leap targets for this season as well.
Yeah, I think the as far as I understand, you know, the biggest thing that anyone can do to lessen their carbon footprint is to be aware of the fossil fuels that they are contributing to the atmosphere. And so by putting our chalets on renewable energy, that's sort of, you know, the 20% that I believe makes 80% of the difference. And then we are doing, you know, that every year we find like little extra things that we can do to help the planet on its way.
I noticed in your goals for this year, one of the things is to have more meat-free meals in the chalets.
It seems to be popular so far, like people are going for it, and I think that there's a saving in it as well, in that, you know, eating a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet is perhaps less costly than eating like a meat diet, and so all of the savings from that will contribute to Cool Earth, which is a great charity.
I did notice that as well. You have got charities that you're donating to. I also thought other interesting ideas for making the running of the chalets more sustainable was going for more local farm deliveries, and even making your own yogurt is a plan for this year, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are so fortunate to live so close to sort of many like amazing producers. So where we are in Morzine, it takes about 45 minutes to get down to like Lac Le Mans, Lake Geneva, and on the shores of Lake Geneva, they have some incredible sort of producers. It's really hard though, because, you know, we would love to sort of, you know, be able to sort of say like, yeah, you know, only local food, but the thing is, you know, with a farm with 2 foot of snow on top of everything, there's not really much that comes out of the ground from December to January. And indeed, you know, in the farmers markets here, like our 3 main like local producers, they're not there in December or January because there is nothing to harvest. So we get like what we can, you know. They store apples, and they store sort of pears, you know, like in the big refrigeration unit. So we get those, and leeks kind of still come out of the ground, and so do sort of like some salad. So and obviously like potatoes and onions as well. So yeah, it's really, really exciting to find.
Well, I mean, there's so many elements in what you're looking to do, and we wouldn't be able to do justice to them now, but you can find out more on your website, which is skiology.co.uk, and then /sustainability if you want to go to that and find out some more information. So I wish you the best with that, with this year's leap. And I enjoyed your story, which I'll put into the show notes as well. So thanks very much, Dom. That's brilliant.
It's a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for the time.
So sustainability, you know, I mean, it is it's not just a story, it's something that I think many people are aware we need to do. And we've covered, train travel and electric cars in different podcast specials previously. I think you just see it all over the place. I mean, really, ski touring in itself is probably all about sustainability. You've seen any more, Betony, any more indicators that resorts are moving in that direction this season?
I think a lot of resorts are trying to take more responsibility. I work with Les Arcs, and Les Arcs have been given the label, the Flock on Vert label, from the Mountain Riders Association for this winter. But I think it's very much the start of things. It's not just a label saying, "Oh, you're doing well, congratulations." It's right, you're doing well, but we're going to work together to do this. So, and I think a lot of resorts are taking responsibility. I always find it hard. We work in skiing. That's our life. We live and breathe it, and it can be quite a hypocritical industry to be in terms of sustainability. But I think resorts have to take responsibility, as do individual skiers. And obviously, Iain, you're leading by example by taking trains for your ski holidays. But yeah, I kind of see resorts doing things. Mountain Riders is some an organisation I follow quite closely. So yeah, there's some changes, but I think it's still slow.
Yeah, well, I guess it's maybe the ocean liner that takes a long time to turn around. But what is really encouraging is seeing all the different initiatives that resorts are bringing out. And I think there's an element of competition in there, and competition is very good at developing innovation. So hopefully we'll continue to report on the podcast with more examples of sustainability. Now, I just want to move on to a couple of reviews because we have had some people contact us. I'd like to thank Janet Barnett, who said, "Thank you for your very informative and entertaining ski podcast, which I look forward to every few weeks." Andrew Brannan, who's a regular listener, said, "Thanks for another great podcast." He was also referring into our last episode, the best resorts in the world. Red Mountain is a big favourite of his. Terry said, "I was delighted to find the podcast. They have a good mixture of interviews, friendly banter, background information of all kinds, general chit-chat and ski news. And it's great to get an insight through the interviews of people's backgrounds and their passions for the sport." He particularly enjoyed the interviews with Dave Ryding and Graham Bell. And he will give us a 4 out of 5, although he does say he hasn't given any podcast 5 yet. Now, talking about the things that he liked, I'd just like to chip in at this point that I'm going to be sharing a survey via our the Ski Podcast Facebook and Twitter. So you, listener, can tell us what you like about the Ski Podcast, what you'd like to hear more of and what you'd like to hear less of, and how long you want to the podcast to last for. I'm going to give away some prizes for everyone or for someone who participates in that. So I'll put that into the show notes and share it on social as well. I also wanted, from a ski book group point of view, to chip in a suggestion from Matt Hayes, who's another regular listener to the podcast. Now, he recommends a book called Alpine Cooking, which is by Meredith Erickson. Now, he says the herdsman macaroni and the tartiflette is the best he's ever come across. Those are his 2 recommendations. How do you 2 feel about tartiflette? Betony, got any views on tartiflette?
Love it. Cheese, love it. Fondue, love it. Raclette, love it.
Right, all of them then. Okay, you're a cheese lover. Mike, are you a tartiflette fan?
Same. There's no bad meals in the mountains.
Well, if you burnt off a lot of energy touring up whichever mountain you've gone up, then maybe you need to be getting Alpine Cooking by Meredith Erickson and getting that tartiflette recipe out of there. So thanks very much for that one, Matt. Now, our next podcast will probably be in about a couple of weeks' time. So it'll be the first one of 2021. And listeners, I'd just like to encourage you to subscribe to the podcast if you can, and share it if you can. You can follow me on Skipedia on Twitter and on Facebook. And you can follow the show at the Ski Podcast. And Mike, what's your Instagram for those great photos of skiing in Wales?
Much the way the Welsh get linked in with their professions and their passions, I'm Mike the Snow.
Mike the Snow. Right, this looks like the time to leave. I've just had a puppy invade my recording studio. So we'll say goodbye now. Thank you, listener, for listening in 2020. And here's to 2021, where we all get to ski a little bit more than we have this year. Thanks very much.